¿Qué pasa, mi amigos? Nima here, and I've been playing Voice of Cards, The Forsaken Maiden. This game wasn't a game I thought I would be into, but after starting it, I was really enthralled with the storytelling. Anyway, before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys to please hit that like and subscribe button. I need it. It's my only substance, is those likes and those subscribes, and if I don't get enough, then I'll perish. Now, as I said before, the kind of card RPG kind of games that have been getting really big recently just haven't been something that I've been interested in. Now, like something like Encryption, I'm definitely excited to check it out. But that game has won numerous awards and people have talked about it in such high regard. But this game, I wasn't sure of. It was made by Square Enix, so for me that's a good sign. But outside of that, I'm not that interested in card-type games. Like, I'm not a tabletop player. I don't get into, like, the card-style games. I'm not like, Warhammer or Pokemon or any of that. Like, I'm all digital, baby. Like, I don't play around with the analog stuff. But what I really did like about it is the lack, I think, of maybe focusing on graphical aspects and animation really kind of focused you in on the story. And the story, I could see so many different things about this that was just really enthralling and really interesting. Like, I think this game is not really the game it appears to be. And what do I mean by that? I mean that this game is actually more about mental health than it is about helping the poor maiden find her place and save the village. And I will get to the details of the story, but in this game you do realize that many of the demons that you fight are not demons of just reckless abandonment, but actually the demons of the maiden herself. They tend to be in her heart or in her head. And there's places like Anxiety Town, which obviously is a point and a nod to the fact that this is her dealing with her anxiety. So in the game, you get to name your main character, and you're kind of like a mercenary for a village that is decrepit and dying. And next to this village there's a cove, and in this cove you find this girl. Now, she doesn't have the ability really to speak very much. She's very shy, she's very timid, and will not go with you back to the village. When you get to the village, though, you do discover that the village, as I said, is dilapidated. And why? Because they don't have a maiden. And apparently, this ritual that a maiden will do will cause the village to grow and prosper, and the island needs that. And with that kind of doom and gloom, they have to just wait for a maiden, but at this point, they know that they had a maiden, and she didn't work out, and so they've just kind of accepted their demise. Really early on, you discover that there's other maidens, and you want a journey to find out how we can maybe bring another maiden, or to maybe bring the components of the maidens and save our island. That's where the game really takes off. Eventually, this girl ends up going with you because you discover she's part of this whole story. And essentially, she is, in fact, the maiden that the village needs. But she's not whole. Something isn't right with her, and she's not ready to take on the ritual and to become the maiden for this village. And it would seem that self-doubt and fear have held her back from being in the position that she needs to be to help this island prosper once again. And on your adventures, she grows. There's a lot of storytelling. It's not all just like this inward-looking doom and gloom game. In fact, a lot of the characters are pretty free-carrying, and there's a good amount of humor to it, but amazing storytelling either way. And ultimately, I would like to say to anyone, I'm not going to tell you much more of the story, but I will say that on each part where you overcome an obstacle, you do notice that it ties in to the maiden, Lottie is her name, to some mental health issues that could be in there. And maybe for the player who is going to actually play the game and look at the story, look at the whole thing as a metaphor for something bigger. And the story may not be as doom and gloom as it seems when you put the writer and the storyteller as the whole, as the world itself, and them dealing with their own mental health. And it was really an interesting way to kind of delve into this game. Now, as far as the combat's concerned, it's pretty typical turn-based, tactical, points, element weakness, and things like that. You have your heals, you have, different sort of tactics that you can do, but for the most part, it's your average turn-based kind of combat, which is great. The only big dynamic that comes in is the roll of the die, which can sometimes give you a critical hit, or a buff, or a debuff, and that really is where, like, kind of the game chance comes in, and where it does become like a card game. The thing I really do like about it too is there are different biomes, if you will, but most of it is laid out in cards that you see face down. And as you move your piece, the cards flip up and the world kind of becomes open to you. And it really does look like a game board, which I really thought, like, this dynamic and the lack of animation, the lack of really controlling your character or seeing your character in any other position besides like this 2D still frame, I really thought, like, this is going to be difficult to get into this game. Lo and behold, that is not the case. The writing is just done so well. The voice acting is also done amazingly well. I was really surprised by how much I ended up liking it. I also have to say, like, the sound effects and the music were top-notch as well. Like, this is definitely well put together, thoughtful game. I'm glad that Square Enix has their name to it. Well, one last thing I do want to say about the combat and the tactics is to use skills and to use magic, it takes these gems, and you do get a gem every turn. So deciding how you're going to use them is part of the tactics. If you just use a normal attack, it doesn't take any gems away, but some attacks and some skills take up to like 3 or 4 different gems. I just wanted to get that in there because that is a big part of the tactics of the game. Anyway, my final thoughts on the game are this. If you're into JRPGs and you like the kind of card type games, this is a great game and you should definitely get it. But if you are on the fence about these kind of games and you're not really sure, I would probably wait for a sale. Because the thing that really comes down to it for me is when I look at it, is it a $29.99 game? Like, is that the value? And I don't know. I don't think so. I think you're paying the extra $10 for Square Enix's name, and I would put it at like $19.99. So if it were me, I would wait for a sale, especially now. There's so many games out. This one probably chose a wrong time to be priced in that mid-tier bracket when it should be like mid to low tier. That's just my thoughts, and honestly, it really comes down to how much I think is under the hood with this game. It's a great game, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's a $30 game. Anyway, guys, I really appreciate you. Let me know if you're going to pick it up. Let me know what other games you're looking at, or what other games you're wanting a review on, anything like that. And again, I will be on Twitch more often. You can find me in the description below. I appreciate you guys. Take care.